evening. Thanks also very much to the Highland Bowling Club for the last minute venue, and also shout out to Darren Galtieri, who came second in the singles bowls in Australia on Friday. So this talk is going to be about my experiences, mainly based on cycling across Europe last summer, sharing my experiences and hopefully some learning, and allowing me to process what actually happened. I realise it's a year's past and I'm still not quite sure what happened. So thank you so much for coming along. So it's 1 AM in the morning. I've been on the go for 20 hours. It's day 12 of this adventure. I'm somewhere in the middle of Romania, near the Carpathian Mountains. I've just ascended the Transalpine Highway, which is the highest paved road in Romania. I've now traversed off track for 44 kilometres along a section of road, or should I say off-road gravel, unmanaged and unpaved paths that was mandatory as part of the trip or race. A lot has happened to me since I left the safety of that paved high road. Some of those things include going without water for about 4 hours after being too polite to stop at what I thought was a shrine to fill up with water. It turned out it was actually just a natural spring that a family were at. It's boiling hot. I've not been able to eat because I've been too busy holding on and gripping onto my handlebars for dear life. If that wasn't enough, some riders have caught up with me and passed me, and an American rider decides to share the single track with me for a brief moment. We're both absolutely exhausted, and in the heat, delirious, and dehydration, he manages to hit a tree root and knock me and himself off our bikes. I fly into a thorny bush, not impressed. Luckily for me, my bike's fine, and other than a few scratches, I'm okay. His rear shifter is broken. I guess I tell him that we definitely should ride together. Please leave me alone. I would be very happy. After that, I fall off my bike myself quite a few times, and finally make it down from this, at the time, what felt like hell path, and find near civilization a water refill and some sanity, hopefully. Because riders have passed me, there is now nowhere to sleep, as all the booking.com bookings are gone. There's nowhere to sleep, it's dark, and it starts to rain. I remember hearing on a podcast that graveyards were a good place. And I was thinking mainly because they have walls round them, and at least the dogs can't get me there. I cycle for a while and finally find a graveyard and decide it's the right one for me. I'm trying to be inconspicuous, it's late at night and I don't want anybody to know I'm there, but there's a massive iron gate that creaks loudly as I go inside. I make my way through to the back of the church, which unfortunately isn't open, but find some shelter in the eaves of the building. I sit down for a brief moment and close my eyes. Maybe I can finally get some rest. I'm not sure if I ever slept, quite, but 5 or 10 minutes later I'm woken by the sound of dogs barking. They're nowhere near me, but they can smell me. And I probably smell pretty bad by this point. I try and stay there sleeping. I can't even find the energy to get my bivvy bag or my sleeping bag out. But the dogs continue to bark, and over the next rough hour or so, the owners come out of their houses in the nearby gardens and shout at the dogs to quiet them. It doesn't last long, and the dogs continue to bark, the owners not knowing why the dogs are so upset. An hour or two maybe pass, and the dogs continue to bark. I hope that I'm so tired that I will just fall asleep, but I can't. More time passes, and finally I'm brought to my feet by gunshots into the air. The owners have had enough. No one's going to get any sleep tonight until I leave. The dogs are quieted by the noise of the gunshots, and I quickly pick up my belongings and leave. Back on the bike it is. I better just keep going. After all, surely it's nearly over soon. Onto the road, there's a difficult pass. I need to make a left turn, but it's a busy, busy road, and for Romania it just looks like one of our single track on either side, but this is an E-road in Romania, and there's large lorries passing close to me, driving me into the dirt. My dynamo's on the blink, literally, and I decide the best is just to hit the side and wait for a moment to pass. I'm patient, but the road's very busy. Finally, in desperation, I run across the road with my bike, through the headlights, and make it into a path that takes me up and over the road and into the forest on a quiet country lane. I keep cycling up and down, and finally I'm flagged down by headlights in front. I'm suddenly worried. Who is this? What do they want? What have I done? Did they see me on this E-road? Did they see me in the graveyard? Am I wanted? It's the police. They stop me. One of them is older, one is younger. One has no English, the other has good English. There's a lot of conversation between them, and they ask me more actually, am I okay? Can they help? What am I doing? What am I doing? There's brief exchanges. After looking me up and down, the older policeman asks the younger policeman, what do I do for a living? After telling him I'm a physio, he nods approvingly, and they let me on my way. I tell them that I'm really scared of the dogs, and they say, that's the least of your worries. What about the bears? So I ask myself, how did I end up on this crazy adventure? And for those of you that don't know, what even is this crazy adventure?
Only had one job.
Thank you. So the Transcontinental race is a checkpoint race across Europe. The edition I did was last year, which was the 8th edition of the race. The race runs from west to east, and sometimes east to west, and it's self-supported. It starts at night, at 10 o'clock at night, and is roughly 4,000 kilometres. It's a picture from the start last year. So if things weren't difficult enough, you set off into the dark, not knowing what on earth is going on. In this race, or any endurance race, or most endurance races, men and women race against each other. It's a race against the clock, and actually your stopping time becomes more important than your moving time. In last year's race, 240 people started the race, and on average less than 50% finished the race, with less than 30% making it in the time scales, or what they call general classification, or rules of the race. How did I end up here at night, starting a race in Belgium? I was, I guess, inspired by people around me, and a friend and flatmate's partner, Paula, did the race before I even knew what the race was, before I even knew what dot watching was, or what any of this meant. And I was in awe by what she'd achieved, but never thought it was something that I would even want to do. Reading books by Emily Chappell and hearing talks from Jenny and Graham were also highly inspiring to me. And a good friend from university, Ollie, was the one who finally made me, in the post-COVID lockdown times, he suggested I sign up for this race. At that time I thought, well, what's the harm? I'm never going to get a place anyway. At least I can appease him by applying, and I won't need to worry about it. Little did I know that actually if you're a woman and you sign up for this race, there's probably a high chance that you will get a space. So I'm very privileged to have got a space, but that's how it all happened. I had an interest in cycling and surrounded by very supportive and encouraging friends, peer group, and my dad as well. So, with a lot of naivety, a botched training plan, a lot of late night mechanics, many dinners cooked for me, a lot of tears shed, and a haphazard route, it was on. So last year's race started in Gerrisbergen in Belgium, which is, for those of you that are into cycling, near kind of Flanders and the Roubaix kind of area. And the next checkpoint was in northern Czech Republic, and then we had to come down to Italy, through to Montenegro, over to Romania, and then finishing on the Black Sea in Burgas, Bulgaria. The race is made up of, I think of it as dots and lines. So the dots are the checkpoints, the mandatory places you have to go, and the lines are the parts of route that the race organised Lost Stop tell you have to do. And in between that, you can go wherever you want. So I passed through 13 countries during the race, some of them twice, Germany and Italy, and covered 4,200 kilometres with approximately 45,000 metres elevation to get to the end. On average, I was covering 280 kilometres a day and 3,000 metres per day, with a rough average speed of 19 kilometres for all the stats people. And my top speed was 78 kilometres an hour, apparently, which is nearly 50 miles an hour. Must have been on its end, obviously. The longest day was across Germany, so did 350 kilometres that day. Germany's just big. I don't know if there's any Germans here, but it's a big place. And my hilliest day was in the Alps. So there was a day where I left Limousin in Austria, or Limousin, and ascended the Umbrelli Pass, down the Stelvio Pass, up Pass Agave, and then up the Tonale. Not intentionally planning to do all those passes in a day, but it just kind of happened that way. And if anybody knows me, leading up to the race last year, I really struggled with route planning, and I left it definitely to the last minute, and it was a bit of this'll do. Commute said I can go this way, it'll work. And I definitely had some nightmares about it leading up to the race. One of them which included a nightmare where somehow there was a tundra in the English Channel that I had to cross, and I'd forgotten my crampons. But then I had to get to China, and I hadn't routed that way, and I had no signal on my phone. I don't know why, but that's what was going through my mind. Thankfully I didn't have to go to China. Next slide. So, I guess what I really enjoyed about the race was the simplicity of it. Cycling, eating and sleeping were my only concerns for just over 2 weeks. And it really, I guess, put into light what's important in life. Cycling, eating and sleeping, and what I needed to worry about. This was my bike setup, and I kind of think about it as like your bike becomes your house. So in the front, in the kind of cockpit area or the kitchen, where the eating's happening, then in the back is the bedroom compartment with all the sleep kit. We've got like a kind of extension of the cockpit, which is like the office, which is the top tube that's got like the power banks, cables, which I kept losing and dropping. And then in the frame bag is on one side the garage that's got all the mechanical stuff, tools in it, and then on this side is kind of an extension of the bedroom and kitchen with a bit of a mishmash of things like arm warmers, gloves, food, and then we've also got water bottles, and then I continuously had all of my back pockets and all of my short pockets full of food that was like my biggest fear, was running out of food. Aero bars on the front, it was kind of like maybe hadn't really used aero bars much before the race, but now like couldn't really cycle without them. They provide really good bungee attachments for food, and also it's great to have a hand change of position. And on this race there was a lot of long road sections where it was just head down and go for 60k, so it was really useful. I had a dynamo set up. It was the first time I'd ever used it, so that I could be self-sufficient and not have to stop to charge things. So it powered my front and back light, and also could charge from that as well, so power supply and my Garmin and things like that. But it definitely didn't work out as well as I was hoping for. I had a lot of issues with that. But yeah. In terms of like kit, the aero bars were also great for drying clothes on. So usually I'd wash a pair of bibs and have a pair of bibs on the front drying during the day. And I probably wouldn't have taken as much kit. I took like spare top, spare socks, things like that. Probably just didn't need it. And I had no plan for how long I was going to cycle a day, where I was going to stop, what I was going to do. Because I had been so haphazard with route planning, I didn't really know each day where I was going to go, where I was going to end up. I didn't know which hotels were nearby or where I was going to sleep. So I actually ended up kind of getting into a bit of a bad routine where I cycled really late into the night, then couldn't find anywhere with a 24-hour check-in, and then we'd end up carrying on. I had, I think, 4 punctures in total. A couple of them were really easy to plug, and then I had a few nasty ones, including the one obviously I talked about at the start. And then I ended up cycling for like 2 days with no spare tube and nothing, and just on a wing and a prayer with my fingers crossed continuously that nothing would happen. In terms of cycling, I did mention dogs earlier, but I think before the race I hadn't really considered that would be an issue. I was more worried about bears, wild boars, snakes, creepy crawlies, but actually I didn't really see any of them at all. And I remember sitting in a pub maybe a week or 2 before the race, and some friends were telling me about stray dogs, wild dogs in Eastern Europe, and certainly in Serbia, Romania and Bulgaria there was a lot of dog chases, They seem to like kind of sit in packs outside towns on an uphill switchback, just waiting for you. So usually I ended up having to cycle back down and wait, and then cycle back up. And there was actually one point in the race where we got a text from the organisers saying that there was a wild pack of dogs operating at certain checkpoints or certain coordinates, and to avoid this area, but there was no way of rerouting around this area, so I just had to go for it. And a friend on the race had messaged to say that she'd actually bought dog treats so that she could throw them at the dogs. I decided that I didn't need to do that, but I always had a water bottle on hand. And I guess it made you cycle faster, so it's all good. I found that cycling was actually really meditative. I think it's the revolutions and, as I said, the simplicity of life, and just pedalling. There was great scenery to look at and nothing else to worry about apart from dogs. In terms of the route, which I've talked a little bit about, but commute isn't great in Serbia. It doesn't know what roads are. There's a lot of gravel there. There's a lot of busy roads. In Austria, I cycled through a banned tunnel that no one's meant to cycle through. At the time I was like, this is really scary. These cars are really close to me. And afterwards I checked the route and I still thought I was on the right route, but I just really wasn't. But thankfully my dreams of cycling to China didn't come true. Next slide. A lot of people asked about food for this type of trip, and not this is accurate, but I think roughly I was probably consuming about 8 to 10,000 calories a day, and I definitely wasn't eating 8 to 10,000 calories a day. So, not ideal, definitely in a calorie deficit. On Sunday as well, quite a lot of countries, nothing is open, so it's really hard to get food. And petrol stations only seem to sell crisps, or 7-day croissants, if anybody knows about them, which is like kind of horrible brioche, soggy croissant in a packet. And it usually has either chocolate in it, maybe cherry, or something else. But it doesn't have it all the way through. So when you bite in initially, it's just like dough for a couple of bites, and then you finally get to like the chocolate, and then it's dough again. And I hate them. As I said, I was really worried about running out of food and bonking, so my tactic was to continuously carry around a sandwich in my back pocket just in case. But then it got to the stage that you'd carry this sandwich in your pocket for like, when it got to like 12 hours, you're like, it might still be okay. And then 14 hours, 24 hours, it might still be okay. Is it okay? So a lot of the sandwiches went in the bin. I tried to entertain myself, so in these pictures, these bagel bites were pizza flavoured, and then I had crisps. So that night I convinced myself I was pizza and chips for tea, but I wasn't really. And then sometimes you got a dessert, like a Calippo, just to keep things interesting. Something I hadn't really thought about or has never happened to me before cycling, I ended up getting really bad water bottle ulcers in my mouth quite early on, and it was all on the right side, which was the side I was drinking out of. When I finally stopped in a hotel and looked in the mirror, they were yellow, pussy, and looked really nasty. Luckily, a dentist I'd seen the week before about some sore teeth had kindly given me some metronidazole, which is an antibiotic, just in case I needed it. So I was really worried that I was going to have some like raging infection, and decided that I would just start taking these antibiotics on day like 4 of the race. In my head I felt like it was a good idea, but since coming home and reading the side effects of metronidazole, which include mouth ulcers, maybe it wasn't the best idea. But I feel mentally it made me feel like I was going to be okay. A friend had also kindly given me some things before I left, including a European charger and also a toothbrush, which was a travel toothbrush, and it was a nice one that was bamboo, so it's good for the environment. But it came with a holder, which actually doubled as a handle. I thought, well, this holder's a bit big and it's going to take up too much space, so we'll get rid of that. But then I actually ended up with this tiny toothbrush that I couldn't get into my mouth properly. So I think that was another reason that things weren't going well. I ended up with a really furry, disgusting tongue, probably from dehydration, but I ended up buying some new toothbrushes in Lidl later on. Next slide, please. So sleep. We've obviously covered sleep a little bit. What I had with me was a very lightweight summer sleeping bag, a baby bag, a blow-up pillow, and a blow-up mat. And I didn't really have much change of clothes, but I had a puffer jacket and I had a very, very light waterproof jacket as well. When I'd been cycling beforehand, in Scotland and in Britain, I really enjoyed being outside and found it really easy, found it easy to find places and was really comfortable doing it. During this trip, I slept outside for 7 nights out of 15, and I'd planned to sleep out a lot more than that, but I found it really, really tough. I think I hadn't considered that I'd feel a lot more scared in a different country, in a different surrounding, a lot less confidence sleeping outside, an element of safety, and also found it really difficult to find a place to sleep. But again, had my route been better, maybe I would have planned better places to sleep. When I mentioned about the day in Italy, I had covered so much elevation and I was knackered. I ended up sleeping at the top of a ski resort at like goodness knows how many meters, and it was absolutely freezing, and it was just the worst idea ever. I didn't even know that that's where it was. I was just like, I've covered this distance, I'm going to sleep now. So that was that little ski hut shop in this Italian ski resort. But it was just a terrible idea and absolutely freezing. I slept in a lane one night, I slept in a field, I slept in a abandoned convent. But that night I couldn't find anywhere to sleep for about 2 hours, and I'd been just cycling around en route roughly, but just thinking, oh, I'll find somewhere. I trudged through a whole tatty field of mud to try and get to a forest that I thought I could maybe sleep in. Actually, that was just not going to work. And then I got to a village that had like a little square, and I was like, maybe I can sleep in the square, but then you don't want everyone was looking in on me. It just felt really open and really just not what I wanted. And then we've obviously talked about church and graveyards. Also, I slept in a few forests as well. The other nights when I wasn't outside, I was sleeping in random hotels that I found on booking.com. I found that the easiest way to book something because I didn't have the language. I felt there was a big barrier, so it was easiest just to be on my phone, introverted, and booking things that were there and available. One night in Serbia, I stopped in a hotel, and it was actually a really nice hotel, but I set 4 alarms and slept through them all. And I woke up, and excuse the language, but I literally was like, ah! It was now like 10 o'clock in the morning, and I'd meant to leave at like 5. I literally ran around the hotel room. And I texted my brother, and I was like, I've slept in, it's all over, I'm never going to get there. And I think this was motivational in the wrong way, but he said, well, it doesn't matter if you don't get there. You've done really well. I was like, what do you mean it doesn't matter if I don't get there? So, but also, because I'd had such good sleep, I cycled really well that day, and probably got to the same place I was anyway. On the final night, so after I've been in Romania, after I've been stopped by the police, after I've kept going, and we're heading towards nearly being at the Black Sea, I'd crossed over a ferry into Bulgaria, and by this point I'd been on the go for 48 hours without really any sleep, and I decided to book a hotel in Bulgaria. I'd met some people on the ferry that were also doing the race, and everyone was kind of cajoling each other to try and get a little bit further and a little bit further before everyone was going to sleep. Everyone was really jovial, they thought we were all going to make it, and I was a little bit reserved. I was like, we still have about 200 kilometres to go. We're not quite there yet. But because they were all going on to this other town, I was like, right, well, I'll book a hotel in that other town and hopefully I can get there too. So after a lot of hallucinations, a lot of slapping myself in the face, a lot of probably really dangerous riding, water bottle in the eyes type thing, I reached this town in Bulgaria in the middle of nowhere, to my thought, about 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm like covered in luminous stuff, big red flashing light on my head. There's all these like car racers around about, and I was like, oh, this is just not going to go well. And I couldn't find the hotel, it just wasn't there. On the map, it said it was there, it just wasn't there. And there's all these like gangs of youths around, and I was like, real fear is like, it sounds stupid, but are they going to like laugh at me? Are they going to attack me? Are they going to try and steal something from me? Like, a bit stupid, but where is this hotel? And actually this gang of youths came up to me, and I was literally terrified, but actually they just wanted to help, which was great. They were actually about 12 or 13. And I phoned the guy, and they translated for me, and they were like, it's okay, it's just about a mile down the road, just that way. And I was like, okay, you sure it's definitely that way? Yes, definitely that way. So get back on the bike, cycle out of town, and a mile down the road is this kind of like a I don't know, like junkyard, scrap metal yard, and a petrol station. And I'm like, I'm just really tired and I just really want to go to bed. Where is this place? So I'm also like, have I just been sent out here because now I'm in the middle of nowhere and I'm going to get killed? Which is a bit irrational, but I'm like, what's going on here? And then I get a phone call from the hotel guy. He's like, we're at the petrol station. So I turn around, and here's this massive guy, dressed all in black, massive chain, with this blacked out car, like those like spinner wheel things. What is this? What is this? I'm like, I still really want bed, so I'm like, so anyway, this guy is like, I'm really sorry I didn't get your message. I was actually on work in Italy and I'm back now. Yeah, you can sit in my hotel. But it's just another mile down the road this way. And I'm like, oh, do I follow this car with this guy who's got a chauffeur? Because I really want bed. I really want to sleep. So I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to go for it. So anyway, as is, people really are genuinely good. We get to his hotel, which is this brand new built hotel in the middle of nowhere. But there's an issue, the bed isn't made up, so I need to wait outside for 15 minutes. That's okay, it's now 4 o'clock in the morning. It's okay. I don't have far to go the next day, really. Yeah, I do. Anyway, it's upstairs as well, so carry the bike up the stairs. And he's off because he's got somewhere else to go, because he's got another hotel across town. So I paid, so just leave in the morning, that's fine. Anyway, into the hotel room. It's literally disgusting. Like, it's so dirty. There's no toilet roll. The toilet doesn't work. The shower's blocked. And it's just rank. But anyway, I go to sleep. I get up the next day. Next day. And after a final dog chase, the worst one I've ever had, where the dogs actually make contact and try and bite my back wheel. And I'm like, I don't have a spare trip, get away from me! Anyway, I made it to the end, and it's unreal. I had no expectations starting this adventure. In my head it wasn't really a race, it was just an adventure, and if I ever got to the end, in any time frame, it would be amazing. I had a very atypical finish for an endurance race. Normally it's a pat on the back at most, and normally there's nobody there. But I had a really supportive group of friends, family, and also the Scottish contingent that were at the race all came out to welcome me in. And as the TCR Lost Dog podcast later said, if Carlsberg made finishers parties, this would be it. So I was overwhelmed to come 4th female and 75th overall. There's definitely lots that could have gone better, but after finishing the race, my main takeaway, which I would say to anybody who's cycling in general, is that I just had this amazing confidence from the race. It sounds like it was really stressful during the race, but actually I felt so de-stressed after the experience. And I think it's that simplicity of life that really led to that. There's no correct way to do this, and I definitely made mistakes. But I think the mistakes are the important bit that let you learn what works for you and how to do things. And it wouldn't be an adventure if there wasn't any mistakes. I think I owe finishing the race, or what I feel is success, to my naivety. And I think there is a bit of the less you know the better. I'm quite a person that's got fear of failure and fear of not doing things right and not starting things because I don't know how they will finish or how to finish them. But actually, because I didn't know, especially the day in Italy, that I was going to do 3 mountain passes, if I'd known that, I probably would have left the hotel in the morning. So not knowing your route can be a good thing. I have a hugely supportive group of friends, and my advice would be to try anything because a trip is never wasted. Next slide. I'm nearly finished talking. Thank you for listening. I just want to touch on the fact this is a picture from the start. I'm here. This is Ollie, the guy that made me sign up for the race. Another friend, Josh, that's there. But what was glaringly obvious at the start of this race is how little women there were on the start line. If you have a look there and see how many you can see that are wearing helmets ready to go. Unfortunately, women remain glaringly underrepresented in ultra cycling. From this race from last year, TCR number 8, 90%, greater than 90% were men and less than 10% women. 2 women finished in the top 20, which is amazing. And what's really interesting is 15 women started this race and 80% of the women finished. Whereas overall, as I said, only 50% of the overall category for this race. So women are more likely to finish an endurance race. Women have shown great aptitude in endurance cycling. The previous year, Fiona Colbinger won the race outright. Lyle Wilcox has won huge endurance races, and our own Scottish Jenny Graham has set the record for cycling around the world unsupported. Race organisers need to do more to encourage women and minorities in endurance cycling, and there are some good initiatives like bursaries and ultra distance scholarships. The Highland Trail this year had almost 50% women start, which was amazing, but we need to do more. There are a lot of things to empower women, women-friendly cycle groups, mechanic sessions, kit swaps, hires and libraries to make things more accessible, but we need to continue to work on this. At the end of the day, I think I'm just an ordinary girl who rides her bike and enjoys it, and I hope everyone else can do the same. Everyone else will get so much out of it. Next slide. So this is just a few things that inspired me. This book I really recommend. Sorry, it's kind of cut off at the top. And this film just came out on YouTube the other day. So Sherry Cardona cycled the race this year as a pair. I can't remember the man's name that she cycled with, but it's a really good film to watch if anybody's looking for any inspiration. And that's what I've got to say. I think maybe I've talked for quite a while there, so thank you for listening. We have like a little interlude if anybody wants to get any more drinks from the bar, get up, use the loos, or just through there. And then we'll reconvene in kind of 5 minutes. And if anybody's got any questions that they want to ask, then I'd love to hear them and hopefully answer them. Thank you.